Hi there, and welcome to the third installment of the weekly AUA videos. So I'll explain this each and every week. AUA stands for Ask Us Anything, and we're taking questions online that you post on the AUA forum. So with that out of the way, let's get started right away. So I have a question jotted down here from Justin, which I thought was a good time to take, because it's about the flu vaccine, and the flu season is just getting started here on the northern hemisphere. The question is, I was wondering how new seasonal flu vaccines are chosen based on the possible mutations influenza can undergo, as well as how those vaccines are then produced. So, Matt, why don't you give this a shot?
Yeah, all right. So this is an excellent question, and it highlights some of the challenges inherent in dealing with this process. So currently there's about 130 reference laboratories around the world in about 101 countries or so that are doing active flu surveillance. And so they're not so much trying to predict what's going to happen to flu, but trying to document what is currently circulating, what's the standing diversity of flu viruses and particularly flu antigens that are out there. They then collect all that, collate that data, and share that with the World Health Organization that for the Northern Hemisphere convenes a meeting every February. And they bring in experts to review all that data and try and compile some best guess estimates about what's circulating the most, what looks the most like last year, what looks like it could be on the increase or on the rise. And through this panel of experts, they then make a set of recommendations about what they think are going to be the risky flu strains for the coming years. That's in February. The flu season itself starts in the Northern Hemisphere the following fall. So this is 6 to 8 months in advance. So this is really, there's a lot of prediction going on. And the reason it has to be done so far in advance is because generating flu vaccine on that scale takes about 6 months worth of production time, right? And so there's a tendency for it to be biased towards flu strains that are emerging early in the last season, right? Are going to tend to be overrepresented in the predictions for the coming season, and flu types that tend to emerge late in the year might not make it in there because it's a little bit too late to get them into the production cycle.
So there's actually a fascinating reason why it takes 6 months, right?
Well, sure. So I actually don't grow any flu vaccines. All flu vaccine that's used in humans has to be cultured within eggs. And in fact, there are certain
chicken eggs.
Chicken eggs, yes, chicken eggs. And there are certain flu types and flu strains that don't work well in eggs, that actually can only be cultured in other cell types. And those, in fact, can't be used as viable vaccine strains because they're outside the sort of safe best practices.
Have you guys had your flu vaccines yet?
No, my wife has.
Most
possibly, but not my children.
November's when you went to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As soon as there's this free clinic.
Yeah, where's the clinic?
Yeah.
So the really frightening thing is that if we had an avian influenza outbreak and it killed all the chickens, we wouldn't have the eggs to vaccinate ourselves.
That's absolutely true. And there's quite a bit of work getting put into trying to improve the production system so that we actually can, because right now the real limitation is the production cycle, not the detection, not the epidemiology. It's how fast we can grow flu strains. And so there's a lot of work being done on these sort of big batch flu incubators that can grow vaccines much faster.
And then, of course, there's an enormous amount of work on so-called next-generation vaccines. So the reason why we had to change the vaccines every year is because the natural immunity that we get against the flu, which is also stimulated by the vaccine, is that of these very, very variable surface proteins, hemagglutinin and neuraminidase, that change every year, and so therefore we need to kind of cook up a new vaccine every year. And so there's an enormous amount of research now trying to find ways by which, so the flu, in addition to those two hypervariable surface proteins, they have a lot of proteins that don't change at all, but they just don't sit on the surface. And so there's a lot of very clever biotechnology to try to make vaccines that would be effective against some of those other proteins that are internal to the vaccines, but that if you could get T cell-based immunity to them, then you could actually get sterilizing immunity. So that in theory you could get one flu shot every decade.
It's interesting, the reaction to this though, which is there's so much unpredictability that goes in it, unpredictability in the future. So why even get the vaccine? If there's so much unpredictability around the science of it, it's come up in the discussion forums.
Yep.
It's a behavioral response. If
So-
there's so much uncertainty about the science, then why go get it?
So when my students ask me that, I ask them if they've ever had the flu. If you had the flu, the proper flu, the 2 weeks of bones aching, unable to move, can't function, can't live, I think if the vaccine reduces my chances of going through that again by 40%, 30%, I'm up for it. The headline figure is 60%. And man, that's a great deal.
Yeah, and it's interesting, right? I mean, whenever we're offered anything that offers just 5% benefit of something, it's a great deal. I mean, if I'm going to offer you, 5% in your bank account,
Yeah.
you're going to,
Depends on the starting point.
But here, no, actually, I can show you the black report. Yeah, no, but that's really a good point, and I think the CDC and all the other agencies are really struggling how to make that case. I mean, it seems so simple on the face of it.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if there's much more acknowledgement of the unpredictability with this.
Mhm.
And it doesn't mean that the rest of the kinds of treatments that are available, whether it's for infectious disease or for chronic disease, are more predictable or stable.
Right.
It just means that there's been much more communication around the unpredictability of this one and much more change in the vaccine for this one. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't have benefits.
Yeah.
Right? But this is the challenge, is if it has to keep changing, then there must not be a benefit, and that calculus doesn't work.
So is that why the uptake isn't as big as it should be or could be?
That's one real answer that people give is, well, if it has to keep changing, then it's probably not any good. And if there's so much unpredictability around it and nobody can get the right one straight, then why bother going and getting it every year?
Although, I mean, the latest figures I saw, I haven't really verified this, but I read this, that it seems to be at a record high this year, or on its way to a record high.
Getting vaccine uptake.
For vaccination coverage in the US at least.
Because I think that there's some other really interesting cultural differences there. So I come from Norway, but I lived here in the US now for 15 years, and I've had heard that norm is typically that you want to go and get your flu shot for exactly the reasons that Andrew said. Interestingly, culturally in Norway, it's just different. People just kind of think that flu is something
But that's because,
horrible.
that's because Norwegians hardly do any work. Here in America, people can't be down to 2 minutes.
So there's just one other
Sorry,
thing I want to
Norwegian.
mention. I read just a couple of days ago that in France, concerns about vaccines have risen to 40% from 10%, largely and almost exclusively attributed to the 2009 H1N1 pandemic. That people felt, was overstated as a danger to public health.
Right, and this is actually, I think, from my mind, a very interesting problem, right? Because anytime we get something wrong, we make a prediction wrong, that gets a lot of press because it's easy to see that you got it wrong, right? Because the counterfactual is there. But if the fact that there aren't really bad flu seasons every year should be taken as an indication that most of the time we're getting it right, and it's in fact the burden of evidence suggests that the system is working, and in fact people aren't getting sick as a consequence of these things. But the really sort of salacious piece of information that's out there that a lot of people are reacting viscerally to is this: I got a shot and it turned out that the flu wasn't really that bad, and I had to waste all my time doing it.
Yes.